So let's fucking scale. So it doesn't matter if you're an altruist or an asshole. In both cases, you should do it because it's in your own self-interest, not just in the interest of others. Since you're already rich and mental health is the main thing that can ruin your life, let's get this straight. Our net contribution to society is morality multiplied by scale, by scaling our freedom. You should know that more than 100 billion animals are killed for meat and other animal products every year. Hundreds of millions of conscious beings annihilated a day. According to one of my favorite modern philosophers, Peter Singer, this is the greatest moral crime of our time. Yes, he's rich and influential and his foundation has the scale to meaningfully help. Still no more than 2-3% of the world's population, considering that actually his intentions are good. The average person has got to 0.00001%. It's 1 in a million of the total possible freedom. Hi, I'm Kalin, founder of an 8-figure startup. Today, I'll tell you what drives me in scaling my freedom and how did I scale my business. Stay till the end for amazing practical hacks. Reality says that quantity has a quality of its own. We have been conditioned by our upbringing, education and culture that quality is more important than quantity. And indeed, it usually is. It's better to eat a great pizza every week than a bad pizza every day. It's better to have one good romantic partner than 7 bad ones. Everything related to health, joy, relationships, happiness requires quality, which, it seems, are the most important things in life, right? When you think about it, you can single out 2 common themes in all such examples. First, there is a visible, tangible limit to the quantity of pizzas and romantic partners that you can have. You know the end of the spectrum, and it's not far away. And second, the quality of a single item can be negative. A very bad pizza is worse than no pizza at all. By extension, we tend to think everything in life works just like that. But there is one glaring counterexample. Freedom does not fulfill the above criteria. Long-term freedom is always a good thing. There is no counterexample. It has the highest correlation with the other good things in life from any metric you can possibly choose. This is why in I Grow Younger, it's the main one we measure, or rather compare, because it cannot be exactly measured. Long-term freedom is a virtually unlimited spectrum. You are just so unimaginably far away from the maximum freedom you can theoretically have that you cannot even imagine how far you can go. It represents the width of your tree, of your possible future choices and their consequences, not just for you, but for everyone. Now let's look at the long-term freedom spectrum, starting from the worst level and improving. We can start at 0 long-term freedom, which means you hypothetically being dead. 0 long-term freedom, 1 future choice, stay dead. Kind of a downer, but at least you no longer be around to experience it, so no worries. If you're reading this, you're alive, which means you're not starting from scratch. You have some long-term freedom. Let's move up the spectrum from worse to very bad. With low long-term freedom, your future choices are crippled by either very poor health, being caught in abuse cycles, modern slavery, which sadly still exists, life imprisonment, or other extremely limiting circumstances. You can still do something given time and luck, but it will be a very wild effort to positively impact the world from a prison cell in North Korea. You would be lucky to even save yourself. At this level, you have next to 0 control over your future. A step up on the freedom ladder and you're mostly healthy and free from abuse, but have extremely limited resources since you live in extreme poverty. Earning enough money just for food and basic necessities is a constant challenge, and success in it largely relies on luck and circumstances not under your control. In such extreme scarcity, many people become vicious in order to survive, meaning you risk domestic violence and petty theft all the time. Although someone stealing your goat is not petty at all if the goat represents half of all your possessions. A staggering 700 million people are caught in extreme poverty, defined by living on less than $2.15 per day. They live in poor, undeveloped countries, which also struggle with health crisis, government corruption, and often high violent crime rate or large-scale armed conflicts. As you go higher and higher, you earn more, you take better care of yourself and your family, live in a more developed country, and allocate more of your time to search for happiness instead of fighting for survival. Until this point, on the spectrum of freedom, of long-term freedom, life was mostly forcing you to be in hunter mode, to be active. At least part of the time, as succumbing to inertia was not an option. You had to be active and creative just to survive. If you visit a poor country, you'd be astonished at the creativity of the local people. They have no other choice. They have to be creative in order to survive. Up to this point, your barriers were mostly game of life barriers concerning survival and resources. As life up the spectrum gets more comfortable and resources more abundant, you may feel less challenged, meaning you may still encounter some game of life problems, but you encounter more and more game of self problems. Your motivation may be low, the lack of meaning in your life may be present, which can potentially lead to depression, anxiety, addiction. And such game of self problems are just as dangerous in this game of life ones, because they have a huge impact on well-being and happiness. Rich and famous celebrities can be depressed to the point of ending their life. People in poor, crime-ridden Central American countries like Honduras and Nicaragua are on average happier than people in my home country of Bulgaria, even though most Bulgarians objectively live a much safer life with much fewer problems than people in crime-ridden Central American countries. A strong game of self gives you considerable leverage over your circumstances. But it's not just the happiness that may suffer, it's also your freedom. If you're not happy because of internal barriers, you're not truly free. You have chains that you build yourself. A comfortable life combined with easy dopamine hits from social media and other sources is a direct path to inertia and sheep mode in your life. And this is a definite danger. As we get to a middle-class person in Western societies, the amount of long-term freedom has significantly increased. Your wealth and income will allow you to live mostly where you want, change jobs if you don't like your current one, or start your own business in order to be independent of bosses in your work. As you become wealthy, resources are no longer a problem, and you seem to have no more pressing game of life challenges to solve. You just need to be grateful and wise, give to charity, and live happily ever after. So is this the end game of long-term freedom? Is this the end of the spectrum? This is where most people see the end, but it's actually just the beginning. You did what you can for your freedom. But there are billions of people in the world who have way less freedom by no fault of their own, just due to the places where they were born or tough luck. While it's not your fault for being lucky or privileged or successful, personally, I take it as a responsibility to fight for the freedom of others too. You may or may not agree with me, you certainly don't have to. That's actually of little significance. It doesn't matter, because it's scientifically proven that helping others brings joy and meaning to life, and the feeling of development and growth is great for mental health. So it doesn't matter if you're an altruist or an asshole. In both cases, you should do it because it's in your own self-interest, not just in the interest of others. Since you're already rich and mental health is the main thing that can ruin your life, remember the depressed celebrities, where to grow except in the ability to help others? It's a win-win for both growth and meaning. So even if you don't want to do it for the others, still the best option for yourself. There is a book, The Second Mountain, which is about this. And this second mountain that you can climb is better than the first one, because in the first one you earn a lot of money and freedom, and then it's mission accomplished, which means no more challenges, no longer valuable for your game of self or mental health. But the second mountain you can climb is virtually unlimited, because there are more people in need that you can possibly help. There are no more ceilings for what you can accomplish. No goals, no limitations, only a fulfilling flow. We can define complete freedom, 100%, as the ability to significantly improve the long-term freedom of every human or conscious animal in the world that struggles with it. It's the end game of effective altruism. A philosophical and social movement I like if we remove the questionable recent edition of long-termism shit from it. Not a single person today or in history ever has or has had anything remotely close to complete freedom. Complete freedom means no more preventable death and suffering on earth for any conscious being. Period. How much complete freedom do we have? How much can we possibly have? It also means curing all diseases that can theoretically be cured, which are probably all of them or almost all of them. It also means for the cures to be accessible to everyone who needs them. Complete freedom means being able to stop any war or violent conflict and to be able to free any innocent or political prisoner anywhere on earth. None of us, including the President of the United States, can free the hundreds of thousands of severely mistreated innocent people in North Korean or Iranian prisons. Our freedom is just not high enough to do that, even if we're the President. And we can agree that we all want it to happen, so it's not a morality problem, it's not the problem of what we want to do, it's not a quality problem, it's exclusively a lack of freedom problem. It's a quantity problem. We just don't have enough freedom. We can continue with many more examples. There are 40 plus million people trapped in modern slavery, 700 million people living in extreme poverty, and hundreds of millions who will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. But you get the point. There's a lot of good work to be done. Regarding the animals, the picture is even bleaker due to the incomprehensible scale of modern factory farming. This is a problem I'm certainly a part of. I eat meat, I'm no vegetarian, no vegan, and we all prefer to just not think about what is happening there. But you should know that more than 100 billion animals are killed for meat and other animal products every year. Hundreds of millions of conscious beings annihilated a day. And their lives can be summarized as suffering, mostly so we can have cheap meat. According to one of my favorite modern philosophers, Peter Singer, this is the greatest moral crime of our time. Are these statistics depressing or motivating? It's your call. Remember, it's not your fault, but you can make it your responsibility in your path to meaning. To fix this, at least the suffering to reduce costs part. Isn't that worth fighting for? Wouldn't it be better if meat cost 20% more, but animals didn't suffer as much? The truth is that if you have a heart, and I believe you do, no matter who you are and where you live, you cannot really look away from many of these things. While you're fighting for your own freedom, it's normal to put them aside for a while, because in order to give, you need to have. If you haven't fixed your own life in the game of self and the game of life, it's hard to commit to others long term. It's of course great to do single acts of selflessness and kindness, but you cannot do it all the time. In terms of game of life and resources, you need to have in order to give. Once your fight is largely when or feels close to when enough, so as not to be a motivating challenge anymore, you need other challenges. Why not take some fights for people and animals whose future is completely out of their hands? And if you're not motivated to fight for your own freedom because you don't think that high of yourself, you don't have the self-love needed, you don't see much meaning in it, here is all the meaning you need. You want to give, and in order to give, you need to have. Not feeling strong enough? Go volunteer in sub-Saharan Africa, in some poor country, talk to people in extreme poverty for a few weeks, you get motivated for life. Just do something. Make a first step if you feel that you lack meaning in your life. It's not that difficult to find it. Even if you're a successful person, even if you're a millionaire, you have not even achieved 0.1% of the complete freedom that you can theoretically achieve. You're just beginning to touch lives outside of your peers and community. So don't stop growing your freedom. They need you to have the power to help them. So let's fucking scale. There are two clear improvement scales in life. The net contribution of every person to society is roughly proportional to the multiple of those. The first is the morality scale, the quality of our actions. Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, "Gradually it was disclosed to me that the line separating good and evil passes not through states, not between classes, nor between political parties either, but right through every human heart." This is mostly about how much you value others and about not putting your needs, ego, or beliefs above their needs and their humanity. To oversimplify the full scope between Stalin and Gandhi, most people are not mass murderers or even assholes that would be mass murderers if they had the chance and laws didn't exist. Most people are not Gandhi either. We generally have the capacity for both, but we mostly do what other people in our social tribes do. Most of human existence can be summarized in those brilliant 7 words by Seth Godin. People like us do things like this. It's all a copy-paste. And to get out of the copy-paste is hard, but often needed, but you can just copy-paste from Gandhi and not from Stalin. The lowest possible average we can assign to humanity on the morality scale is 50%. The average person is at least half moral. This is consistent with the theory that morality was a beneficial evolutionary trait. According to my observations, about 30% of people are actually so highly moral that it becomes an obstacle for their personal growth journey and reduces their long-term freedom instead of increasing it. The morality scale does not exist in a vacuum. As moral people create and immoral people destroy social value, we have to ask ourselves, what is the net outcome? Not just in morality, in intentions, but in consequences. So, isn't it the case that a few immoral people may destroy everything that millions of moral people have built? Historically, the destroyers were winning for a long time. It was way easier to start a war than to stop one. It was easier for a barbarian invader asshole to burn your crops and village down than for you to prevent them from doing so. And it was easier for people in power to abuse it than for people with near zero power to stop them. Those were harsh times, the times of power games, as Tim Urban says. But things gradually improved. More trade made people and countries more cooperative. Civil rights and protection followed, rule of law, eventually democracy. Women and minorities received rights and protections, but I find the main keys to progress to have been science and technology. Those were a big deal, since they created a framework which helped ideas become reality, and mostly the good ones. Thus, the value of ideas became much greater over time. Because even if geniuses like Archimedes could conceptualize a submarine in ancient Greece, there was no way that could actually build it, since metallurgy and engines were hopelessly behind the needs of a submarine. So great ideas just languished for a long period of human history, waiting for their time. Now it's very different. We have a humongous body of tested and verified knowledge in science and equally impressive industrial capabilities. Every idea can potentially change the world, as it can become a reality if it benefits people. True, this also applies to very dangerous stuff like weapons of mass destruction. But still, finding the industrial capacity and financial incentive for those will be harder and more expensive than for something we all love and buy, like modern computers. Killing people is not just wrong, it's also very unpopular and not economically profitable. So capitalism is kind of on the good side in this one. I will make the bold argument that the world has recently come to a turning point where it's easier to create than to destroy. Despite their drawbacks, our frameworks for preventing destruction, the rule of law, international treaties, the cooperation that enables trade and supply chains, even bureaucratic juggernauts like the EU that are super slow, they prevent destruction. They are quite robust, which we can estimate by the significant reduction of major wars in the last decades. True, right now we have a small peak of wars, but still, this is one of the most peaceful times in history. Some industries are now actually over-regulated, meaning that we went too far with preventing potential destruction and now obstructing creation too much. Typical example is the red tape around clean energy. In the digital world, destruction is easily reversed and the friction of creation is very low. This gives rise to projects of monumental scale and quality like Wikipedia and open source software like Linux. If you think about it, monumental tasks like building the pyramids or putting a man on the moon, they were done by about 100,000 people each. Why? Because coordinating more than 100,000 people is extremely complex in the pre-digital age. But now we have Wikipedia, which is just basically a bunch of text and information. And in the creation of Wikipedia, much more than 100,000 people have contributed. So basically, Wikipedia is a wider, more complex process than putting a man on the moon in terms of cooperation. But we did it. Why? Because it's digital. There is, of course, always a danger of sliding back. There are warning signs, the wars in Ukraine and Gaza, the rise of dangerous authoritarian leaders. In such a critical moment, we need creativity above all. Ideas are what will save us from hate, division, misinformation, and populism. Ideas open the gates for a refreshed, more compassionate view of the other side. Most people are ultimately well-meaning. If you look at this populist politician that you cannot stand, their followers, they are great people, decent people, who may just have been manipulated into believing a story of twisted truth. And if we had learned critical thinking in school, which we definitely should have, this might have not been the case. Since most people want to contribute ideas for the common good, and we need ideas and have an imperfect but still kind of working filtering systems for them in science, in the free market of money and attention, the contribution of most people is a net positive for society at large. When we take into account that most people focus their love and attention on their loved ones behind closed doors, and this cannot be measured by any metric like GDP or anything universal, it becomes even more positive. So basically, people are good and people give a net value to people. And when we add that the most moral people are largely afraid to scale their contribution and have tremendous potential if they do, something we'll talk about in another video, we come to the conclusion that humans are on average morally positive, and we need to give every person more freedom. It's not a quality problem, it's a quantity problem. The freedom is what we need. And this is what I Grow Younger is created to do, to create more freedom for people. As we said, our contribution to society is roughly morality multiplied by scale. And of course, the morality can be negative if you do harm instead of good. Scale is a number, it's scalar, it's always positive. So we measure scale by the freedom to help ourselves and others. Now let's look at the whole freedom scale, the quantity of our actions. We already looked at when we become a millionaire, we're not even at 0.1% of our potential for complete freedom. Now let's look at Bill Gates, leaving aside the questions of his morality and all the conspiracy theories and the controversy. Bill Gates is probably 2 to 3% free. Yes, he's rich and influential and his foundation has the scale to meaningfully help. Still no more than 2-3% of the world's population, considering that actually his intentions are good. And he is not even touching the problem of the poor animals in factory farming. The President of the United States, given that he has full support in Congress and all the courts, authoritarian leaders like Xi Jinping, probably maxed at about 10% freedom each, because even the President of the United States, with all of the resources of this huge, rich country, can probably just help meaningfully about 10% of the world's population. Meaningfully meaning fixing all their major problems in life that are out of their control. Let's get this straight. Our net contribution to society is morality multiplied by scale, by scaling our freedom in order to use our good or bad intentions. One of our multipliers, the morality, the quality, is at 60-70% of its maximum potential. If the maximum potential for morality is 100%, we are let's say it's 60. So we're not maxed. People can be better, more well-meaning, more compassionate, more helping, but we are somehow on the right way. We are over half there. On the other one, the freedom, the quantity, the average person has got to 0.00001%. It's 1 in a million of the total possible freedom. Bill Gates, who has been working 20 years without taking a day off, and who was at the right place at the right time, who was lucky, who was smart, he got to be one of the richest and most influential people in the world, and he still has 2 to 3%. He's 2% there. Imagine how far the scale is, how far you can climb the second mountain. And our top 2 world leaders have probably less than 10% total freedom, even with the support of their huge countries behind them. Just saying, where should we seek the progress? We focus so much on quality, so much on morality, but freedom is what we actually lack. Freedom. The average person has more relative morality than Xi Jinping, an authoritarian leader of a country of 1.5 billion people, has relative freedom. You are more moral than the President of the United States is powerful. That's the absolute objective relative to the theoretical maximums of morality and scale and power and freedom. You are more moral than the President of the United States is powerful. Where do we grow? We grow our power, our freedom, and our scale. And also, if you want to make the world a better place, ask yourself the same question. Is it more easier to make a politician more moral because they're already powerful? Or to make yourself, if you're already moral, more powerful and free? Which is in your own hands? And it's clear what the answer is. I hope that you are by now convinced that both you and the world need you. We need you to scale the long-term freedom scale as far as you can go. It's good for you and it's good for the world. Past a certain point, you will be focused on helping others climbing the second mountain, which in turn will give you joy and meaning, something that wealth itself cannot do long term. And we solved the why you should scale. Now let's discuss the how. And here there's a lot of personal experience that goes into it from myself. How do we scale our freedom? When we talk about freedom, we talked about small life choices, like our millions of micro decisions. And we painted a grand picture of entrepreneurship as a kind of misunderstood field. Most businesses fail, but actually relatively reliable path to higher freedom when done right. So we covered kind of the small part where you should be a hunter and always try for more and aim high, and we covered the big part with the big decisions about choosing an industry and starting a business, but we didn't cover the middle. How do we actually pull it off? What do we do every day? Here we talk about practical scaling of a business. What is your scaling path? How do we do it? Life is complex and offers many paths to success and wealth. Some require a lot of talent. Not everyone can become an opera singer. Some have very low odds of success, like becoming a professional athlete, non-mainstream sports, the ones whose existence we only remember during the Olympics. Some are mentally very challenging, like cutting-edge science. Some are greatly dependent on capital, like trading and investing. What is the sweet spot for an average person? It better be a big spot, because you need flexibility, like to move around, to adapt in order to tweak the path according to your character and according to the changes in the environment. The sweet spot, if you don't have any special talents, is entrepreneurship. Building some kind of business is the most common way to wealth and freedom. This way, you make money, which can be converted into many freedom-improving activities for you and others. Money can be converted into hiring people whom to delegate to in free time. You can trade money for time in other situations. For example, you can use a taxi instead of driving. You can reinvest money to make more money. This one is a no-brainer. You can support good causes that need funding, turning money directly into world change. And you can hire people who can bring positive change to the world. You can hire experts. You can make any kind of non-profit project. You see that hiring is a common point here, delegating and hiring. It starts and ends with hiring. Nothing is as valuable as the efforts of smart, motivated people. For everyday chores, you can outsource. But for your core activities in life, you hire and you try to hire long term. So let's summarize. Billions of people and much more animals would really appreciate your help because they are not in a position where they can help themselves. This path will also give you unlimited access to growth because, let's be honest, you'll probably never reach your complete freedom, so you always have room to grow, and it give you a lot of meaning. It's a flow, there is no limit, perfect for your mental health. To help the people and animals in need, you need morality and freedom. You're already mostly moral, but you're like 0.0000001% free. There's a lot that you can grow in the freedom and the scale. Freedom comes with covering basic requirements in the game of self and then scaling in the game of life. It's a quantity, it's not a quality, it's a quantity. Freedom is just the different amount of shit you can do. That's all there is. Yes, don't look at it from a political, philosophical or whatever perspective. It's just how many different choices you can take. Once you overcome your game of self challenges, the scaling of freedom has a high correlation with money and understanding how the world's structures work, because understanding gives you the keys to changing stuff, and money itself and the things you can buy with money are often the key. The best path to both of those is starting and scaling a business in a profitable industry where you focus on making money, selling to rich people and other businesses rather than making something for the crowd. I recommend B2B industries. At the very start, you will likely fail, but make sure your fails are fast and small rather than big and slow. They will be educational. You learn how the world works in practice, not in theory. In this initial period, you need a lot of hunter mode and a healthy amount of chaos. The right industry choice will make you eventually succeed. This is the generic advice. Specific advice for scaling a business, freedom or wealth is dime a dozen, so you should be wary of questionable gurus, seminars, courses. There's very often a conflict of interest when they mix advice about your life with promoting their paid shit. So, I Grow Younger doesn't try to sell you anything. It's completely unmonetized. So, basically, whether you succeed or not, thanks to us, does not change our financial situation in any way. We're not doing this for money. We'll give you two very specific pieces of advice that you won't find in almost any other source because they cannot be monetized. They run contrary to established myths and they're just not sellable. Like no product can be sold with these advice. So you won't find them anywhere or almost anywhere. Let's go bravely into uncharted business scaling territory. Scale comes with individual scaling steps. You don't scale while eating breakfast. You have to do something to scale. So once you have a business going well and you have already tasted economies of scale, it's easy to see the next steps. You need more sales, you hire more salespeople. You need cheap, yet good support, you outsource it to the Philippines, like textbook stuff. But before you actually have anything, where do you start? How do you scale before the economies of scale kick in? What are the first steps? And here are two crazy enough to be great strategies that each cover the respective game of self and game of life sides of scaling from 0 to 1. They also are a perfect combination. And if they sound crazy to you, remember, not all crazy ideas are great, but all great ideas are crazy.